there's a first reading of that policy for student activity fund. And basically, we're doing it tonight because because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some parents in the community have gathered together to make lawn signs for the graduates. And this policy states that we can support that, and we're only supporting it for those students who cannot afford to have their signs. So that's why it's important to have that policy approved tonight for the first reading. And then we have the revised school calendar up for next year. And Sarah, I should have asked you, I think maybe if you can, to pull it up. It's on the board. It's on the board members only webpage under agenda items. I'm sure it's there just so that the board members can look at it. Basically, we had to revise this because of the new contract.
Pull it up now.
Yes, please. And I should have said that before. Thank you. So we have that we used to have 182 student days as a requirement for students to attend. Based on the new collective bargaining agreement that was agreed upon at the last board meeting, it is now 180 days. So we had to go into the school calendar. I think it's further. I think go back up, please, Sarah, and it's under agenda items on the left.
Agenda items, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. And if you could,
Pat, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just so everybody knows, this is live now. Do you need me to stop the stream?
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, not at all. The school calendar, slide down. I see it right at there it is. Right? No, it isn't.
Revised calendar here.
Yep, there it is. Thank you. So just so you can take, and Nate DeForest, you'll be happy with this revision. I was thinking about you when we did it, because based on the fact that there's only 180 days and based on the fact that we have a pretty good chance that schools will not be opening until this time period in September, we believe we need 3 in-service days at the beginning of the school year for us to get everything back up and running and to do some curriculum work. We know that students are going to be all at different places academically. So we need those 3 days of in-service. So we're front loading them for the next school calendar. So if you stop right there, you'll see in September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, they're shaded in blue. And that means that the students will not be attending. That is just teacher in-service. And then schools will be closed for a long Labor Day weekend. And then students will be starting right after Labor Day. So that is an adjustment. And that is because of the pandemic, but then we also had to take off 2 student days. And so the school year still ends, you'll see, on June 11th. So the only difference is that beginning of the school year. And then if you don't mind, Sarah, just sliding back up to February, the 4th in-service right there. The 4th in-service, which is a blue, is when we usually have it, right, which is right before President's Day. Any questions on the revisions that we put in place as a result of the 2 reduced days, student days, as well as because of us thinking that we're going to need this time at the beginning of the year for coming back? Questions?
Not for me. Thank you.
Okay. Makes sense to everybody, hopefully. And then the final thing, and again, Sarah, I apologize. I'm used to Sarah, Lisa doing this. If you go back to that same page that you were just on in there, and it should be the workshops, which is second from the bottom. That's, yep, you got it. And those are the workshops that we're asking you to approve tonight. Thank you for enlarging that. So the workshop that Colleen McCourt, one of our counselors, attended was a free workshop. It was just travel fees, and that was right before schools were let out. And then that week of the last final week of what we now have as the final week, probably the final week of school. On March 13th, we had 3 of our pre-K teachers attend an autism workshop. And then I'm pleased to say that 2 of our nurses attended a webinar while schools are closed, took advantage of a webinar that was being provided on COVID-19. So we are asking for your board approval there. And that is it for the work session. I think that gives you all the explanation you need for the regular session. So since we advertised that the regular session would begin immediately after the work session, Frank, are you all right if we move into the regular session?
Yes. I'm good.
Okay, so
I
there
don't
we
have
go.
a gavel.
Pardon me?
I don't have my gavel, but I'll jury rig something here.
And I just want to mention that, Christy, we're going to have you present first since it's before 7:30 because we advertised that the public hearing on the budget would be after 7:30. Okay?
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good to me.
Sarah will open up. Sarah will open up. Or who's opening up? Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank.
All right. I call the meeting in order. Adequate notice having been provided by the posting of notices with the township clerk, South Jersey Times, and all board members having been notified. A regular meeting is held virtually due to COVID-19 and directions go to our website at www.logantownshipschools.org. As governed by the board policy 0167, the presiding officer may waive the rules when necessary to maintain an orderly operation of the board meeting. This is a remote meeting. The board president has decided to only have 2 public participations, which will be restricted to first, the public asking questions solely on the budget, and second, on any item listed on the agenda. This ensures the public an opportunity to have input prior to action being taken. And finally, one of our 5th grade students lost his father to COVID-19. So I'd like to have a moment of silence for that unfortunate family. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Donnelly,
Here.
Mrs. Pegler,
Here.
Mr. Bowen,
Here.
Mr. DeForest. Don't forget to unmute yourselves. Mr. DeForest. Mrs. Hill,
Here.
Mrs. Lombardo,
Here.
Mrs. Mason,
Here.
Mrs. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Russell.
Here.
I'm gonna try Mr. DeForest again.
Here.
There we go.
Okay, Pat, discussion items for, you're going to do the Christie, right?
Right, we're going to do Christy because it's before 7:30.
Okay.
So, Christy, we're going to have you present the science scores.
All right.
Okay?
Sounds good. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm here to share the results of the spring 2019 NJSLA science assessment. This is, Sarah, I'm trying to kind of do both, look at my notes and look at what you have on your screen. Okay, good. So here's the second page. That's fine. So this is the first time that we're receiving scores from the assessment. It was taken in 5th and 8th grade last May. The previous year, they did administer the assessment, but we never received scores. So I'm reporting on the scores from this past May. The 5th graders took the assessment, and the 5th grade assessment spans standards from 3rd grade through 5th grade. Our 5th graders last year only had the NJSLA science standards for 2 years, so for 4th and 5th grade. Our 8th graders took the assessment last year, and they had the standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and that's what the assessment covers. You can see that the scores fall into one of 4 buckets, a little bit different than the NJSLA math and ELA assessment. The last 2 buckets, levels 3 and 4, would be considered meeting proficiency. Okay, so I'm just making sure I covered that. Okay, Sarah, you can just go to the next slide there. This is a required slide by the state, just saying how many students we tested in each of the grade levels, 96 in 5th grade and 79 in 8th grade. Skip. This shows you the percentage of students who fell in each of those buckets. Again, we're looking at levels 3 and 4. It compares how we performed in each level in comparison to the state in terms of percentages. I can show you a little bit more of that in a user-friendly way on the next couple of slides if you want to keep flipping through, Sarah. Okay, so you can see here in grade 5, in the first column, you'll see that the percentage of students at Logan who were at levels 3 and 4, meaning meeting proficiency, was 48% in comparison to the state, which was 29%. If you look at 8th grade, we had 25% of our students in those levels 3 and 4, and in the state, there was 20%. Okay. Go to the next one, and I think I have that in a graph format. Yes, so Logan is the blue, and then the yellow is how the state performed. And so Logan is still outperforming the state. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is the first year of the assessment. We still are above the state. They were doing a lot of norming. I think they're also considering the fact that the students really did not have the standards all the way through, kind of similar in the way that the park was at the beginning, right? The students didn't have the standards beginning in kindergarten. So hoping these scores start to improve as they go through the grades and they have them for an extended period of time. You can go to the next slide, Sarah. Thank you. This shows you the performance of our demographic groups and it shows you the number of students in each of our demographic groups. It does not show you their performance because we have 10 or fewer students in each of those groups. So whenever you have 10 or fewer students in those groups, you cannot report on their performance because you just to remain anonymous. Our white students are the only demographic group that we have a higher population than 10. So you can see that 56% of our white students in 5th grade were at levels 3 and 4 and 32% in 8th grade. You can go to the next slide. The assessment measures 3 areas of science. There's earth and space science, life science, and physical science. I think so, yeah. So you can look here, if you look at the yellow 2 bars, this will show you our performance. On this slide shows you our performance of our 5th graders on earth and space science. The yellow 2 bars show you the performance of Logan students who are above expectations in earth and space science in comparison to the state. So you can see that 18% of Logan students were above expectations in earth and space, where the state had 11%. If you go to the left, you'll see the green bars, and the green bars represent students who were near meeting or meeting expectations in earth and space science. Again, Logan students are outperforming the state with 44% of those students near or meeting, and 38% of the state in earth and space science. If you go to the next slide, you will see how our 5th graders performed in life science. Again, the yellow bars, 14% above expectations, where the state had 8%. Our students near meeting or meeting for Logan, 57 versus the 40 in the state. For life science, you can keep going, Sarah. Then you have physical science, again, outperforming the state in the green bars, and the yellow bars is what we want to look at. Okay. And then you'll see 8th grade, 8%. So this is earth and space science in 8th grade, so 8% above expectations, whereas the state had 6%. And then moving over to the green bars, you can see 48% versus the 40% at the state. Okay, and then life science, similar situation. And we can go to physical science. And again, this is the only area where we were like right with the state, 1% below for our students who are above expectations. And again, we're surpassing the state on our students who are near meeting or meeting in physical science. So what does all of that mean? I just want to share some notable achievements, just so you could see that our 5th and 8th grade students had a higher percentage in levels 3 and 4 when compared to the state. Both grade levels had a higher percentage of students exceeding or meeting than the state in all domains. And our high performance, we had a high performance in life science in 5th grade and a high performance in earth and space in 8th grade. I think our middle school teachers do enjoy teaching earth and space science, that's for sure. And the final slide just talks about some plans for intervention. Science is something that we've never really gotten this much in-depth information on, so we can use some of this data. Unfortunately, we won't get this data again next year because the students did not take the test. But we're going to look at possibly doing some cumulative reviews in 3rd through 5th grade science. It's something that we've never looked to do. So, our students in 5th grade are not really necessarily used to taking a test that spans standards that they learned in 3rd, right? So how do we spiral in some of those standards throughout the science learning in 5th grade so that they become more familiar with them? looking into the middle school, this is something that we really have been talking about doing, just kind of revising the curricular topics taught in each grade level in middle school to provide a more consistent flow. That's something we'll be looking at. And then just our continued efforts with equity, really, working with our science teachers on providing an equitable curriculum in science to improve scores of our demographic population. So that's what I have there. If anybody has any questions.
Any board members have any questions? Christy, I'm going to ask you to hang around until the second public participation, just in case any of the public has any questions on those science scores. Is that right, Frank?
Yep, that's fine, Pat.
Okay.
Now we can jump into the public hearing on the budget.
Yes.
Yes, we just wanted to make a clarification on the student who lost their father to COVID-19. It was a female student who lost their father, not a male student.
All right.
Just to clarify for the record.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, this is a joint presentation because Sarah, our business administrator, and I have worked very, very closely for the past 3 months, would you say, Sarah, on this budget?
Yeah.
And so we both know it inside out and upside down. So I'll begin as superintendent the way I usually begin. So if you go to the next slide, we always start with our goals. And everybody knows, our board members know what our goals are: student achievement, equity. And for the first time, our third goal was managing the budget, because right from the beginning, from September, we knew that we really had to look at the budget and determine what was needed and where cuts could be made for this coming year. So the administrative team and I worked very closely with Sarah throughout the year, making plans, adjusting, to manage the budget, and that would be managing the budget and presenting. And the final culminating activity is our presentation of our budget tonight for the 2021 school year. We always also remember our district mission statement and what we are about, and we strive to continue to support these 5 core values, which are listed on the next page. And we are strongly trying to have equitable access to education for all of our students. Dr. Jansen referenced that earlier in the final slide for the science scores. Providing a safe, supportive, and positive learning environment. Boy, that has been a challenge more than ever, whether that's a remote environment or an in-person environment. We never thought we would be dealing with a safe, supportive learning environment, trying to achieve that on a daily basis from home. So all of the work that we've done with developing a strong remote learning environment to protect our students is paying off. Celebrating and promoting diversity continues to be a core value of ours. Believing that every child is capable of learning and encouraging students to take educational risks. I just remind the audience as well as the board that they continue to be our core values. And then we go into district statistics, just to remind everybody of who makes up our school district. So we first start with the students that we are educating within district. And for the next school year in 2021, we are projected to have 739 students. Again, as you can see over the years, that is declining enrollment. That is one of the reasons why the state is looking at us in the fact that they are decreasing state aid. But the thing that has helped us over the years is the full day pre-K. So without the pre-K, we only have 739 students. But because we were granted an extension to our pre-K program of 3 additional classrooms, next year we will be educating not 60, not 90, but 135 full day 3 and 4 year olds in our pre-K program, which brings our total up to the number of students we are educating in district are 874 for next year. So that is an increase over who we're educating this year in-house because of the additional 3 pre-K classrooms that we're being funded for from the state, by the state. We also keep in mind that we have students, high school students that we pay tuition for, and that we continue to consider them as Logan student residents. And so they're embedded in our budget. One of the reasons why our budget is going through some challenges. It's because of the increased tuition, and Sarah will get into that later on in regards to Kingsway students. But next year, we have an increase. We have a projected increase from 230 students to 237 students attending Kingsway, and we have a reduction in the number of students that are going to GCIT. So we send students to both places. We just got word the other day that we have 9 acceptances to GCIT, and usually in the past, we've had about 20 students going to GCIT for every grade level. So that is a reduction. And that is why you see a little bit of a shift from the number of students going to projected to go to GCIT versus projected to go to Kingsway. But these, as Mr. Dickin, who's the superintendent of GCIT, has informed me, these numbers could change and they could go up. There are more children who are on the wait list, so for GCIT, so we shall wait and see. I think you're next, right?
Yep,
Sarah?
I'll jump in and talk about our tuition costs relating to Kingsway's tuition specifically. And we do narrow in on this just because this is a large percentage of our budget. It's definitely a high cost that we pay for our kids to attend Kingsway. And that next year we're going to be paying $3,039,000, which you'll note on the far right is much more. It's 11%, more than 11% increase for the second year in a row. Our cost per pupil goes up each year as Kingsway spends more on high school education. Right now, they're able to do that more than ever because they are receiving more state aid under the SFRA calculation. This is the School Funding Reform Act. Their enrollment has grown, but their state aid did not over the years while the formula was not funded. So now the state is trying to catch their funding up to where they should be. And with more state aid, they have more expenditures, which in turn increases our tuition. This is likely to continue to rise over the next few years until they're fully funded, which I believe is the 24-25 school year. Next year's increase, that alone, just from the 1920 to the 2021 school year, that's over a $300,000 increase. That alone exceeds our 2% increase in the tax levy funds that we receive, which I'll go into some more detail later.
Go to the next slide. Okay, so that's our statistics. Now we want to talk about our programs, what's in this year's budget, and then we'll talk about what is not in this year's budget. So we always start with, go back to that picture. That's too cute of a picture, Sarah, just to pass by. We put that in there because they are our youngest students, and they are the ones who are benefiting from our full day pre-K program. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so for next year, in the 2021 budget to support educational initiatives, we are have money in to purchase a warranty to protect our Chromebook investment. And that is really important. And we continue to have common planning time, which means that teachers of the same subjects and the same grade levels can plan together, and that builds consistency in our program. For this coming school year, there is no reduction in instructional minutes, even though we have a significant reduction in state aid. We were committed to try to stay with 120 minutes for ELA and 75 minutes for math in our middle school. We are continuing the walk to intervention program, which has been so successful in our K and 1 first grade and kindergarten classrooms at Center Square, which is a concentrated time when students work on phonemic awareness and phonics with students who are similar to their level. And then finally, we're continuing the choice opportunities in 8th grade rotations. So we were able to keep these things in our budget for next year. We do not know if we're going to be able to continue doing that if we continue to suffer from reduced state aid in the following years. Okay. Other resources that are still in our budget for next year is that we're very proud of this, especially for our special needs students, that we can provide a continuum of services from special needs students being serviced in class to an LLD program, to a preschool disabled program for our very, very youngest, or a multiply disabled program. So we really are responding to the growing population of students with special needs. And that is a pride that we have of what we're continuing to be able to support in our budget. We also continue to have a half-day G&T teacher for those students that benefit from a gifted and talented teacher. We have been able to preserve 7 interventionists for our at-risk BSI, basic skills students. We originally had 8 interventionists. We had to cut back by 1, and now we're down to 7, but we still have those 7 embedded. And we are continuing this year to pay for our remote learning, and that is the iReady program, which has been so beneficial for our students during this closure of schools and when everybody is learning in distance learning and remote learning. Our iReady program has really benefited. It provides students with personalized pathways. We also have the professional learning opportunities embedded in our budget for our staff members, especially our teachers. Okay. Okay. This is a time when we talk about the pre-K program and how much money not only how much money it's bringing into the district, but what the benefit of it. And that is giving us, and there's the money there for everybody to look at. Yes, it is $1.5 million so to fully operate 9 full-day pre-K classrooms for 3 and 4-year-olds. What does it give us? It gives us the ability to have special needs students receiving full day services as early as 3 years of age. It provides up to 135 Logan parents with full day preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. It also relieves about $380,000 in salaries and benefits from our general fund budget, which this year saved 4 teaching positions. And half of the music teacher will be partially paid with the pre-K funds. So it is a benefit for our district. Even though our general fund, we are losing state aid, this is a special fund that we applied for 4 years ago. We expanded it 2 years ago, and now we're expanding again. And the DOE is continuing to support that grant, that fund. Okay, Sarah.
Our infrastructure initiatives, this is made up of our maintenance and facilities and equipment in the district. We do have a reduction in recurring costs as a result from our referendum projects and the improvements that we did. This allows us to purchase some necessary equipment, so that was very helpful. There's more benefits to the referendum projects that we're still working to wrap up. We're also using $212,000 of maintenance reserve for required maintenance on buildings and grounds. And we're using $499,000 of capital reserves for various capital projects not covered within the referendum. And that money can specifically only be used for capital projects and nothing else in the budget. Those projects would be specifically listed on our long-range facilities plan for the district as well. Any questions before we move on to the reductions in the budget?
Yes. Hi, Sarah. I have a question. This is John Russell. Just wanted to know, are we saving any money since we're in this pandemic on certain areas that we really don't have to pay, like utilities or maintenance and all that stuff? Is there any areas that we are saving any kind of money?
Well, utilities are still obviously not being utilized anywhere to the extent that they normally would. So yes, obviously there are some savings there. We do still have some minimal people in the building, so we do still have some lights on. The custodians are in there. Trying to think where else.
John, we will not know that for a while, but we'll keep you informed. That would be the 1920 budget, so we'll keep you informed of the savings. So it's still not determined yet, but we'll keep you.
Every month we have a finance meeting, correct? And Sarah is paying out.
We're talking about the next year's budget. We can bring it up later in the other part of the board meeting when we talk about financial reports.
Okay, we'll move to the next line. Okay, now we'll go into reductions for next year. This is not a happy place for us to be, but it's a real place where we have to be when we are realizing the significant loss in state aid and the significant increase in high school tuition charged to us by Kingsway. So that combination has resulted in the reduction in staff. There's a total of 8 teaching staff members the positions have been cut. So there are 2 in the middle school, one math and one ELA position, which is the English language arts position. So that's a 14% reduction. There are 4 elementary classroom teaching positions that are being cut. 2 from second grade, 1 from 4th grade, and 1 from 5th grade. So that's a 21% reduction. And then there's 1 center square interventionist, which I referenced earlier. We used to have 8 interventionists. We are now having 7 for the next year. And the technology position is cut. So those were, remember at the very beginning, I talked to you about the goal of managing the budget. That has been a result of us working all year long to looking where we could trim the budget, where we could move people around, where we could increase class size. And that's the next bullet. So all of this reduction it results in that we have to increase class size for next year. So the next slide shows the work that the administrative staff did with me in working on looking at how we came up that there could be 2 classrooms in second grade that were reduced, but no classrooms in third grade. And it all depended upon the number of students in each of these grades. So you can see on the first 4 columns, but the second, third, and fourth column are based on this year's enrollment, and the last 3 columns are the projection as those grades go on a diagonal, go up to the next grade level. But what you'll see, and let's see how good. Oh, last night I used a PowerPoint. Oh, the pointer. But Sarah, you have the ability to do the pointer if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. Oh, good. So if you just maybe circle the 17 up here in the kindergarten class. Thank you. Okay, so just for the audience as well as for the board members to see that next year we're going from a current class size of 17, and if you go, that's it, great, Sarah, to a increased class size of 21, and that is due to the fact that we have a bigger projected class coming in, but we're only putting 4 teachers in there. And then first grade, the same thing goes on. Depends on each grade level. In the first grade class, the first grade will stay the same. But if you go down further to 4th grade, we have to go from an average class size of 19 to 22. Then same thing happens in 5th grade, an average class size of 19 to 23. And then you can see in the middle school, we're going up to 24 and 25. This is not what we want to do, but when we don't have the state aid coming in, there has to be a reduction in staff. Now, the next slide shows us that this is a graph that shows the teacher to student ratio of all the districts in Gloucester County. And so we were at a pretty low rate, which is where we want to be for a teacher student ratio. We were at 9 to 1 ratio. That's with all the interventionists and all the special ed teachers and as well as the general ed teachers. So we can afford to increase our class size. So we have room to move up on this scale. This is not a bar graph where you want to be on the right side. You kind of like being on the left side, but I'm showing this graph to everyone to say that we did have a low teacher student ratio. We just can't afford that anymore. Next slide. There are also reductions in staff. We tried to do across the board. So it wasn't just teachers that were being reduced in staff, that we also are cutting our data analysts. So that person will not be in our budget next year. This year we've done shared services with another district for his services. So it was cut back to under half, but next year that person will be completely gone. Our part-time IT support staff person is no longer in the budget next year. And the curriculum secretary who left in August 2019 will not be replaced in 2021. So we tried to go across the board in cutting other staff members. Programs that are being cut, and this is sad news for us. But again, when you're suffering from over $1 million in cuts, you have to cut somewhere. So our summer school, it will be completely cut except for the mandated extended school year services for some special needs students. And that's just because it's mandated. And then after school activities, any activity that is a non-mentorship club is going to be cut. we cannot fund those clubs after school anymore. The reason the mentoring clubs will be funded is because we are fortunate enough to get a grant. Most of I know our board members know, a good number of our public knows that we have, this is the first year of a 4-year grant. So the mentoring clubs will be able to continue being afforded through the equity grant, but not through our general fund. And field trips are going to be cut also. Yeah.
We also targeted some services in district where we thought we could have an opportunity for some saving. Aramark has been in our district for many years. We provide the maintenance management and the custodial services. We spent a lot of time evaluating this and negotiating the contract with Aramark, and we were successful in reducing it by $147,000. This equates to a reduction in 3.5 custodians. That's 3 full-time and 1 part-time custodian. I'm sorry, we're reducing a full-time to part-time. That's where the 3.5 is, and eliminating 1 part-time position, 1 part-time administrative assistant. We also, transportation. We currently provide 2 after-school buses for Logan Elementary Middle's after-school activities. And we also have 2 after-school buses at Kingsway. Those are going to need to be cut from the budget as well. We are consolidating our preschool only buses into all of our Center Square bus routes. And the combination of these things will save us approximately $115,000.
Okay, Sarah, I think this next section is yours.
Yep. So we're going to get a little more into the state revenue. This is one of our larger sources of revenue, the state aid that we get. And this is something that is being targeted under the School Funding Reform Act. So right now, our state aid is 20% of our general fund revenue. It used to be a little higher, but we've, as you'll see in the middle column, it's been a decrease each year by a little more. And it's going to rapidly decrease each year under this new formula that they're funding. Formula that was created 10 years ago, but was never put in place. We're considered an overfunded school since we have district wealth with our industrial park, and also because we have decreasing enrollment. Because of these reasons, they calculate that we have too much state aid. So the DOE essentially wants us to rely more on local taxes to fund our budget. So for the 2021 school year, you'll see right at the top row there, they're cutting almost $750,000 from our state aid. This is only the 2nd year of cuts out of 6. So we do have another 4 more years of cuts that we have to be faced with. And I think our largest cut is not even scheduled to hit until the 21-22 school year. We'll show some more detail on that at the end of this section. By the end of 24-25, Logan is going to lose approximately $3.8 million in total. This is a significant hit to our revenue source, and it's going to be tough over the next couple of years as we try to balance our budgets. The only good news on this slide is the far right column, our debt service, that $303,000. This is state aid that we're receiving that helps us with our debt service taxes, which is our payments on our principal and interest for the bond referendum. The state helps us fund 35% of those payments that we make each year over the next 20 years.
Sarah, before you leave this slide, I would like to mention this 3rd from the last column. This is other good news here. I don't want to bypass that slide, and I know that was not your intention, but I want to bring to the public's view and public's attention the fact that pre-K aid back in 2016-17 was we only received $36,000, and because we applied, we had foresight and we applied for the pre-K grant. This was the year we got $645,000 in 17-18. Then in 18-19, 19-20, that's when we increased it by 2 more classrooms. And you can see now, because we applied for it and the state granted it, that's now up to $1.5 million. That is significant, but please know, the public needs to know, the board does know that can only be spent in pre-K. So even though our increased total, it looks like that we got increased state aid. Sarah, am I correct? That is
You're right.
only
Yes,
because
thank you for
of
clarifying
the
that.
free code funds.
That's right. Yep. And that's not part of the cuts, obviously. That's because
Right.
we applied for the additional classrooms. That's something totally separate from what I was talking about with the funding, the formula.
Yep.
The other large source of our revenue for the school district is our school tax levy. For the 2021 school year, that's going to be $13,392,000 for the general fund. Please keep in mind there are two pots of money for the school tax levy. The debt service one, which we talked about already, to help pay for our principal and interest for the bond referendum, those capital projects that we're working on. Those costs are amortized over 20 years. We do get some state aid to assist us. That tax levy amount, the 343, that would be higher if we did not get that state aid. But luckily we do. And so that keeps that lower, and it keeps it right on par with where we've been in prior years. I know it's a new bond referendum, but it was passed to keep in mind with having almost no impact on the taxpayers, no difference from what they've been paying all these years. The general fund is where we are capped at 2% increase annually. This year's increase was $262,000, which I mentioned earlier. This is less than our high school tuition increase alone. So this is also less than our increase in our salaries and benefits. There's a number of increased costs that far surpass this amount that we're allowed to increase our general fund tax levy. And it makes it very hard to manage those increasing costs with state aid being reduced and taxes being capped, which are pretty much our only two primary sources of revenue. Anything else, Pat, you want to?
No, no, you explained it perfectly.
So what's more important for the audience and the residents is how that tax levy impacts the residents. Logan is very fortunate to have the industrial park that provides ratables that offset that tax burden from the taxpayer solely. And in Logan, the district property values have increased $34 million alone in this year to bring up to a new total of $1.45 billion. That is wonderful news for residents because that, like I said, it just offsets that tax burden from it solely falling on taxpayers' shoulders. So the total tax levy being $13 million, that makes the tax rate 0.9429, which is an increase of 57 cents. So I'm going to explain, because I know that's just a bunch of calculations and numbers. So, what does that 0.57 mean? So on the left-hand side, these are all average property values for Logan Township. The one with the asterisk, that is for the 2020 calendar year. That is the average assessed property in Logan Township, $212,700. So that equates to annual school taxes of $2,005.50, which is an annual increase of $12.22 from the year before. Pat, were you going to take over here on summarizing this, or you want me to go through it?
You can go through it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So despite our cuts in staff and services and programs, it seems unusual to see that our budget has actually gone up. But I just want to remind you of the things that we talked about. The debt service went up, and that's because we have the tax levy for principal and interest. And last year, due to the timing of when those bonds were sold, we had no principal payment in the 1920 school year. You'll see 1819, it was around 500,000, then it dipped down to 200, and now it's going back up. And that's because we're getting back into the swing of our amortized principal and interest payments. So it will level out after this year and be right where it's been all the other years in that $500,000 to $600,000 range. So that's one significant increase. The other significant increase was the special revenue funds, which is that $500,000 for preschool. That was another large increase in revenue. So that's why it also went up. And then lastly, the increase in our general fund, that goes back to those capital and maintenance reserve withdrawals that we talked about, that allowed us to be able to focus in on required maintenance expenses, and capital projects that we needed to do. So that is why, even though we're losing all this state aid, you will see an increase in the total budget overall.
So I will take over this slide and just kind of try to summarize the two major budget challenges that Sarah has referenced and we continue to reference all year long. We knew that there was a projection that the money was going to be reduced, but when you look at those figures, and these figures are posted and have been posted on our main webpage on our website, it is a significant decrease in state aid on the left-hand side that is at a high point, not next year, but the following year in the fiscal year 2022. So there are not good signs ahead of us with state aid reductions. And for over the total of 6 years, it looks as if they continue on this path that we're going to suffer a loss of over $3.7 million. A little bit earlier, Sarah referenced the fact that we are lucky to have the industrial park, and we are. Taxpayers are lucky because they take the burden off of the homeowner and they take up 2/3 of paying the taxes in Logan community. But what the state of New Jersey says to us is that we are wealthy because the Logan community is wealthy because of the industrial park, and therefore they are not paying enough local taxes, the community as a whole. And so we should be getting more from the industrial park and the taxpayers by having higher local tax. The problem is that we are held to a cap of only increasing our tax levy each year to 2%. So the two don't mix. And because of that, we are in this conundrum. The final thing on the right-hand side is we are also in a conundrum that we send our students, the majority of our students, to a school system that was underfunded over the years and now is being funded fairly. So they're getting more money, so they're spending more money, so they can charge us more money to educate our Logan student residents. And that's why Kingsway is increasing each year their tuition. So if you combine this year for fiscal year 21, the $749,000, and then combine that with the increase in tuition of $319,000 right there, you're over $1 million that we are in the hole. And that's what we were facing when we went into the 2021 school year. So with the budget we presented to you today and presenting to the public is reduction in staff, reduction in contract services, with Aramark, reduction in transportation, reduction in, what am I forgetting, Sarah? Continued reductions. But we had to do reduction in field trips, reduction in after school clubs, because of the loss of money from the state. If you can go to the next slide. We also have we want to say, how are we planning on addressing the challenges? Well, I'm pleased to say that I've been working with several members of the community that are part of the Educational Foundation. They're the Board of Trustees. So we're working on the establishment of that Educational Foundation so that community members and businesses from Pure Land can contribute financially to reinstate programs that are not funded in the 2021 budget and beyond. That, for example, field trips, after school clubs, after school transportation. Those are the things that if we establish this educational foundation and community members contribute to it, as well as Pure Land businesses contribute to it, then possibly we can put those programs back in the budget through funding source. The other thing that we will do to address the challenge is I have in the past given testimony at the state level and continue to petition state legislators to change the funding for schools so that it's not hitting districts like Logan hard, which is in this double whammy area that they are suffering. They're saying that the state is saying that we have a wealthy community, but yet we can't increase our taxes above 2%. So that's how we plan on addressing the challenges. And then something we weren't expecting. So the board meets with Sarah and I twice for full days in the month of February, March to do board budget retreats in preparation for planning the budget for next year. At that time, we finished up at the early beginning of March. We had no idea of COVID-19 in front of us. So we have ramifications of COVID-19 and the remote learning and the toll that's taken on the Chromebooks that we've had in district and other related services. So we can't even begin to estimate where we are at and what challenge that's going to be for the future. The ongoing mandates of school closure and social distancing. I'm just saying to people that no matter when we come back to school, and I believe social distancing will still be playing a part of that, just handling how we're going to be doing that in an environment where social distancing is not even a thought about usually in a school is going to be an unforeseen challenge that's going to affect our budget as we move forward. And then possible unanticipated future cuts, even in addition to what we shared with you tonight, due to the current financial situation of the state of New Jersey. All of this results in additional strain on our local district finances and resources. So we are not painting, Sarah and I are not painting a rosy picture tonight. We're painting a sincerely honest picture where we've done work to try to present a 2021 budget that we believe still will provide our students with a good quality educational environment, but there are challenges ahead. Thank you. And if you have any questions, Frank, do you want to address how the questions could be addressed?
Yes, there's a questionnaire attached that people can get to and give your name and address and write your questions, and our board secretary will read the questions to the board members. And I'm doing because I don't know how many public out there, and this is our first time. I'm going to limit the total questions to about 30 minutes. So, Lisa, if there are any questions, you can start.
No, at this time, there's no questions. I just refreshed the page and there are no questions on the budget.
It looks like we have about 20 people streaming.
Okay.
And does that 20 there include us, the 12 of us?
No,
No or yes? No?
no, it does not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'll wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody has any questions. If not, then we can move on to the motions for the budget and the two attached motions to that.
The stream is about a 40-second delay. You're on the stream. You're just now asking that question. So
Okay. Pat, Sarah, thank you for all your work on this, on the budget. And thank you to all the board members who spent the 2 Saturdays going over this budget, not knowing what the impact of the COVID-19. Any questions, Lisa?
No, still no questions.
Okay, if anybody does have any questions, they can just mail them in and we'll try and get back to you with the answers to your questions on that. We need a motion to adopt the budget resolution for 2021 school year. And there's 2 attached motions to remove money from the capital reserve fund of $499,000 and to take withdraw money of $212,600 from the maintenance reserve. Can we have a motion on those 2?
So moved. Kim Reed.
And a second.
Second, Kelly Mason.
And a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Kegler,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen.
Yes.
Mr. DeForest,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardo,
Yes.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Russell.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Now we can go on to the rest of the agenda items. Pat, do you have any presentations or correspondence?
No, we do not have any correspondence, but just draw your attention to the fire drills. If you want to slide down further, as there are fire drills and security drills, the only thing we had was an evacuation drill. In March 10th, we had fire drills and an evacuation drill at LEMS scheduled for later in March, but obviously that didn't happen when COVID came. As of March 16th. So that was the only evacuation drill. The enrollment is listed here. And I just draw attention to the public as well to everyone that we are educating and paying for 1,141 students. 833 students are are being taught and educated within our district, and we are sending to the two other districts, Kingsway and GCIT, 300 some students, but for a total of, we are paying for 1,141 Logan student residents.
Okay.
Suspensions are listed before school let out. This was up and through March 16th, March 13th, are listed on the chart.
All right, thanks, Pat.
Mhm.
The finance committee met last night after our test. We went over some items and the bill list. I looked at the bill list today, and I'm recommending that the finance committee reports, the bill list be adopted as read. Any board discussion on any of the agenda items? John, you can bring up your question now if you'd like.
I'll do it at a different time, Frank. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, Pat, you went over, we had the work session and we went over all the agenda items. And there's no
Yeah,
more.
Frank, the only agenda item I would draw everybody's attention to, everything has been discussed ahead of time, referenced. I would go all the way down, Sarah, to M, the use of facilities. And I just want to highlight the partnership that we have with the township right there. We are, throughout the COVID crisis, Sarah and I both have been involved in the daily and weekly conference calls with the mayor. That's building a good and strong relationship with the municipality. So you'll see that the 3 use of facilities are being asked of by the township. And I'm proud to say that they used our school parking lot for the mass distribution. So we were on TV. I think we were covered by Channel 10, and it was our great facility, exterior facility, that was highlighted then when masks were being given out. And then the other thing I would draw your attention to is that Linda Oswald called us, and because the primary election is being moved to July 7th, it's usually held in June, but it's moved to July 7th in New Jersey. She was not able to secure the same place where the primary elections always held. So they called us up, and we very graciously and, thrilled that we can have that partnership with the township. So I just like drawing your attention to that.
Thank you, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hearing no questions from the board, we'll take a motion to adopt the minutes as shown, the financial reports, including the bill list and all of the agenda items.
Frank, can I just say something? Should we ask for other questions before those action items are voted on from the public? I know they were able to ask questions on the budget, but they weren't.
You're correct. We open up the meeting to the public to address any questions on any item that's on the agenda. Sorry.
That's all right. It's new. All this is new to us.
At this time, there are no questions.
I would give it another 30 seconds, 40 seconds because of what Rob said.
Sure.
Away.
Yep. Any questions, please?
No, still nothing.
Okay, then I'll accept the motion on the items that I spoke about earlier.
So moved, Kristen Lombardo.
And a second,
Second, Lene Hill.
and a roll call, please.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Mr. DeForest?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The Bush County School Boards, all the meetings have been canceled until further notice because of the COVID-19. Carolyn, I'm sure New Jersey School Board has done the same thing.
Well, we are having a virtual legislative meeting on the 9th of May. And I suspect we'll get lots of information.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, home and school?
I have nothing from Katie.
Okay. Kingsway, our meeting is tomorrow night, and just to cover what was talked about earlier about Kingsway, their budget for tomorrow night, the proposed budget for the next school year was $46,907,000. In 2018-2019, it was $40,850,000.
Oh.
Almost a $7 million increase in their budget in just 2 years. And that's what we're voting on tomorrow night.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. Wow.
And we pay 3 million of it.
Yes. Well, that's just a new money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only difference would be the difference between last year's tuition and this year's tuition. The rest is state aid, increased state aid.
Yeah.
Okay. Any new business to talk about?
No. Every day is a new day.
Yeah, every day we plod along week after week, wondering what's going to happen.
Every day is a new day in the remote learning world.
Any old business?
No.
All right, then we need a motion to adjourn. And I thank everyone for participating, the board members and the public.
So moved.
How many is that?
There was, one was Carolyn.
And I'll second Kim.
Okay, and all those in favor, aye.
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 All right, good night, everyone.
Good night,
and
Frank.
thank you.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, everybody.